Okay, continuing Kaiju Masterclass. We're here with one of my favorite people in the world, Michiru Oshima.
Hi, konnichiwa. Konbanwa.
How are you doing today, Michiru?
It's good. I'm little tired.
Yeah.
A long time I walked a lot. It's good today. I'm very fine. I'm good. I'm very happy to meet you again, Erik. How long? No see.
I know it's been over a year, more than a year, because G-Fest was last year. So
last year in July.
July, that's right.
So assisting us today is now Amanda. Is it Amanda Whalen or Derendorf or?
Currently Whalen.
Whalen. Okay, so
soon will be Derendorf.
Got it. So thank you. Amanda's going to sort of just be helping smooth over the translation as we talk to Michiru today. But we should lead off with something really exciting. Michiru, we have a record label for Kaiju Crescendo.
じゃあ、生田さん全部あれ通訳してくださいね。
はい、わかりました。すごくいいことがあって、カイジクレッシェンドのレコードレーベルができました。
And I'm going to let Erik kind of talk about this record label and who the individual was that is going to that kind of is going to have us on.
後でエリックさんはちょっとそのレコードレーベルのことを説明して、誰が担当することなどについてちょっと説明します。
Yeah, so I was contacted by a fellow by the name of Richard Guerin, who works for the American composer Philip Glass. Richard Guerin, go ahead, Amanda.
フィリップ・グラスと働くsorry, can you Philip Glass, where does he work again?
Oh, he's a composer.
A composer in New York.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Sorry, I got flustered. Could you repeat it very quickly?
No. So I was contacted by someone named Richard, who works for Philip Glass.
Richard という人に連絡されて、その人はフィリップ・グラスの下に働いています。
Yes, and his name is Richard Guerin, and Richard Guerin. Yes, and Richard Guerin is the man who manages Philip Glass's record label.
Richard がフィリップ・グラスのレコードレーベルを管理しているということ。
And Richard also manages his own record label, which is called Supertrain.
と、リチャードは自分のスーパートレインというレコードレーベルも管理しているんです。
And Richard is a big fan of the music of Akira Ifukube, the Japanese composer for the original Godzilla composer, but also Japanese music in general, and he wants to release Kaiju Crescendo on his label.
と、そのリチャードさんは一般的な日本の音楽だけではなく、最初のゴジラ映画の作曲家伊福部明さんの音楽の大ファンでして、なのでカイジクレッシェンドは自分のレコードレーベルにやりたいって言いました。
So we'll be on the lookout for that very, very soon.
Yes.
もうすぐ他の情報が出てくるです。
So, I guess,
and just really quickly, Richard has heard a preliminary version of the recording, and he loves it.
リチャードはなんか中途半端の記録を聞いてすごく好きと言ってくれました。
All right, so let's get into discussion because the reason that we have Michiru here is to talk about her and talk about her music because it is some of the best that's ever been written for Godzilla movies. But first, to lead off, we'll try Erik. You had a sort of a question about Miss Oshima's classical influence or her classical music and influences.
I'll just translate what you said quickly. So 今日はもちろん大島さんの音楽について話したいと言ってとゴジラの世界で多分一番好きな音楽だと言います。
Right. So my first question for Michiru-san is I've noticed that when because Michiru writes both for film music and also concert music, and I notice that in my opinion, I feel a lot of French influence in her music, especially in her classical scores, and I was wondering if there was any basis to that.
大島さんは映像音楽とコンサート音楽を作曲しますとエリックさんの意見で少しフランスの影響があるんじゃないですかと思って特にクラシカル音楽にあるかなと考えましたけどいかがなさいましたでしょうか。
そうなんですね。私は今ニューヨークにいるんですけれども、住んでるんですけど、その前、今でも残してるんですが、パリに15年ぐらい住んでたんですね。そこまでじゃトランスフェア。
はい。So Oshima-san, she's living in New York right now, but actually 15 years ago, she lived in Paris.
で、私の大学の時の、作曲の先生が、フランスの、コンセルバトワールの、をベースにしたことを教えてくださったんですね。
And when she was in college, her composition teacher was a French person.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, because there's a lot of what I would consider to be French elegance and just these very, very clearly defined French melodies in her music, I find.
エリックさんは大島さんの音楽でフランス的なエレガンスとクリアに特定されているフランスのメロディーがあるんじゃないですかと言ってます。
Yes, maybe I like the French sound harmony.
I think so. I think so.
Michiru, do you feel when you write film music as opposed to concert music, do you feel there's like a different kind of aesthetic, or do you approach it differently when working on a stage piece versus a film piece? I guess is a way to say it.
自分のコンサート音楽と映像音楽を比べるとスタイル的や神秘的な違いがありますかとアプローチも違いますか。
もちろん、of course、もちろん映画の音楽はやっぱり映像がありますから、映像を見て自分がインスピレーションを持つというかのがまず一番大切なんですね。そこまで。
So she says, of course, and when she's doing music for films, you have the visual to go along with it. So, she's able to watch it while she's working on the music, and that's very important.
だけど、コンサートの音楽は、自分の中で、世の中に何を伝えたいかという、自分のメッセージが自分の哲学とか、考えてることとか、それを音楽にするんですね。
And for concert music, it's more about what she has inside herself, what she wants to express. If she has a philosophy or that kind of thing, she's looking to express through her music.
So, Michiru, before you got involved with Gojira, you scored an anime short, Ultraman 78: Peace and Love. What do you remember about scoring that short? It's I think it's question 3, Amanda.
Question 3. Okay. ゴジラ映画で働く前にウルトラマン M78 劇場 Love and Peace の音楽を作曲されましたね。そのプロジェクトでいかがでしたかと特に思い出がありますでしょうか。
ウルトラマンのアニメーションに関してはとても可愛らしい子供のためのちっちゃな子供のための楽しいアニメーションだったんですね。なので特にすごいハードなゴジラとかウルトラマンのすごい 怖い感じではなく、とても可愛らしいイメージだったんです。それで一番印象的だったのは、生まれて初めて、ウルトラマンを作っている会社のつぶらやというところの会社に行けた時が、行ったことが一番嬉しかった。入ったらそこにこう大きなそういうつぶらやのマークがあって、それがとても嬉しかったです。
So she says, first of all, that Ultraman short, it was very, very cute. It was an animation meant for young children. So when you think about it opposed to like the, regular scary Godzilla, it's very different. He's not really scary. He's just very cute. And it was very exciting for her when she worked on this project that she got to go to Tsuburaya Studios and, walk in the door and see the big logo. And it's just very, 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 very cool.
Eric?
Yeah, very interesting because I know, Michiru-san, when you said that you began composing for Godzilla, you didn't listen to other Godzilla composers because you wanted to develop your own concept of what Godzilla music should sound like. Is that true?
Yeah.
大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫。私は女性だったので、あまりゴジラに興味がなかったんですね、子供の。で、ゴジラの映画を1回ぐらいしか見たことがなくて、ゴジラの音楽は全然知らなかったんですね。で、もちろん伊福部さんの一番有名なタンタンタンタタタン、あれだけは知ってましたけど、他は全く知らなかったんです。
So since she's as a woman, she wasn't very interested in Godzilla when she was a child. She didn't see any of the movies, and she didn't really know any of the music except for the, the very famous Ifukube dun 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 dun. That she knew, but that was about it.
Well, so I think Michiru, at one point you said you met Ifukube-san very briefly. Can you tell us about that meeting?
Yes. 伊福部さんとはね、コンサートの時に、クラシックのコンサートの時に、伊福部先生が私の隣に座っていたんです。それで、ご挨拶をして、はじめまして、大島ですってご挨拶をしたら、伊福部先生が、あなたは新しいゴジラの音楽を作曲するんですよねって、それですごくびっくりして、なぜ伊福部先生は私が作曲するの知ってるんだろうと思ってすごい驚いたのを覚えてます。
So he was sat next to her at a concert is how they met, and she introduced herself and said, "Hello, I'm Oshima," and he was like, "Oh, you're the new Godzilla composer," and she was very shocked that he knew right away who she was.
So, kind of sticking with the way that she sort of separated herself from the other composers. Her Godzilla theme is threatening, but it's also very big, and it has like a dark, heroic, like sort of nature to it. How did she seek to really portray Godzilla as like with a darkly heroic theme, I guess is what I'm asking.
大島さんはゴジラのテーマ曲を作った時に、そのテーマはすごく大きくて劇的でダークな英雄的なテーマに感じると思いますが、どのようにゴジラを描きたいと思いましたか、その時。い
わゆる映画監督の手塚さんからゴジラっていうのはすごくヒーローになってるんだけど、実はそうじゃなくて、とても大きくって、とても怖くって、決してヒーローではなく悪いやつなんだと。それをちゃんと音楽にしてほしいって言われたんですね。どれぐらい大きくってどれぐらい重たいかって実際に数字で、手塚さんが話してくれたんですね。なので、すごくその大きさとか重さとか、怖さを音楽にしようと思いました。
手塚さんという方でしたか？
はい、ダイレクター。
So she had talked to Tezuka-san, the director, about sort of the way that Godzilla was going to be in the film, and he's saying he's you know, he's going to be very big and scary and more of like a bad guy than a hero, really. And he told her like you know, how large he was going to be, how heavy he was going to be, so she could sort of have an idea of how to express that.
Which was dong dong dong
Yeah.
dong.
That bass drum and synthesizer is a step, Godzilla's step. ゴジラの足音でドンドンって出して。
I think I know exactly what she said. She meant that the large drums that begin her theme are meant to be Godzilla's footsteps, kind of musically represent. So, Michiru, how much freedom did Tezuka give you as far as writing your score? Did he give you input, or did he just say, Michiru, you go write the score as you see it, and I'll see you on the scoring stage?
Yes. そのどれくらい自由だったかっていうと、手塚監督はすごく任せてくれましたね。で、最初に一曲そのゴジラのテーマをデモを作って聴かせて、OK ってすぐもらって、その後最後のメガギラスの時の最後の戦いの、テーマも一応聴きたいっていうんで、その2曲を書いて事前に気に入ってもらいましたけど、それ以外は全く何も言わないで、本当に自由にのびのび、作曲ができました。
So director Tezuka-san, he pretty much just left it to her. She did make a demo tape ahead of time of the, you know, the music, and she had him listen to it, and he said okay right away. You know, he didn't really get too critical. And then for Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, for the last fight, the theme for that fight, he said he wanted to hear it ahead of time. But you know, that's pretty much it. She was very free. He wasn't too hard on her.
So, kind of working on when it came time for her to write the theme for Megaguirus, it's a very horrific theme. A lot of like screeching strings for like the mega neurons, and then just the Megaguirus itself is a very kind of hyper theme. So, what's her inspiration when she goes to write theme for Megaguirus?
Megaguirus.
メガギラスの時は、その幼虫、ちっちゃな時からだんだんこうメガギラスが大きくなって成長していくんですね。だから、その途中のその成長の過程を音楽にしないといけなくて、最初の頃は本当にこう気持ち悪い卵がこういっぱいあって、それがこうだんだんこう飛んでいくようになると、ちょっとヒャンヒャンっていうその高いところで鳴き声を出して、で大きくなってもっと重たい感じになってと、その成長の過程を音楽にしました。
So Megaguirus, he gets bigger and bigger. You know, at first it's just an egg. Yes. And so you know, when it's very small, it's sort of like a hyang hya, like sort of there's like a crying sound, and then as it gets larger, like in size, she made the theme get heavier and heavier, and that's basically how she thought about it.
I know that our musicians from our concert in Chicago enjoyed, especially like the string players really enjoyed doing that. That was a lot of fun.
I have a question actually about something I've always wondered about in the Megaguirus score. There's a part during the final battle. There's a little motif that always reminds me a little bit of like Spanish music. Was there any? I was talking about French influence. Was there any Spanish influence in that? Because it just sounds so Spanish to me.
なんだろうな、多分ゴジラのテーマが非常にミリタリーの感じがするんですね。ゴジラのメインテーマが。それに対して少しだけそのエスニックなサウンドを加えたかった。だからそのメロディーもそうだし、あとトントントントンってトントン太鼓をねこう鳴らすのとか少しエスニックなサウンドを加えました。
So if you think about, the typical Godzilla theme, it's very military sounding. So compared to that, that theme for that final battle for Megagirus is like, it feels sort of ethnic almost, with like the tom-toms, and like the melody is sort of ethnic feeling, is what you say.
私がね、すごい大好きなアメリカの映画があって、猿の惑星っていうの、が大好きなんです。あれがすごくそういういろんなパーカッションを使ってて、ジェリー・ゴールドスミスっていう作曲家の猿の惑星。
So she said there's an American movie that she liked a lot. Saru no Wakase?
猿の惑星。ジャパニ猿の惑星 is a Japanese language.
I can look it up.
Total Recall?
With Jerry Goldsmith, Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes. Okay, I was like, okay, got it.
He used many percussion and sound, and so I love that sound.
It's actually funny because that sort of was. I briefly mentioned that with David Arnold this morning, but yeah, Jerry Goldsmith on Planet of the Apes famously used steel mixing bowls. They're just like bowls that you would mix cake batter in, I guess, essentially. So when it came time to come back, there was a movie she didn't work on, and then Tezuka came back and they made Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. That score is unique because it was recorded in Moscow with a large orchestra. So how did that decision come about? Because it's really beneficial to the music.
モスクワに行った理由ですよね。
そうですね。
モスクワに、なぜ行ったかというと、その前の年に、メガギラスの時に東京でレコーディングしたんですね。録音したんです。で、東京のスタジオでものすごく大きな音を鳴らしたんですけど、映画のファイナルミックスの時に、ゴジラの鳴き声とか、ガラスが割れる音とか、いわゆる効果音に音楽が消されてしまっちゃって、もう、すごい効果音だった。そこまでじゃあ、
はい。So the year before, they did the Godzilla versus Megaguirus recording in Tokyo. And it seemed like it had a really big sound at the time. But when they did the final mix for the movie, every time that there was like a roar from Godzilla or like glass breaking or, some kind of sound, the music kind of would like not be as loud. It would sort of like fade out a little bit, and they were unhappy about that.
How many...
それで、もっと大きな音を、サウンドエフェクトに負けないような、大きなオーケストラにしようと思って、モスクワに行ったんです。
So they decided that they wanted to have a big enough sound that the music wouldn't lose out to the sound effects. So they decided to go to Moscow and do it with a really large orchestra.
About how many players would you say were on like in Tokyo for Megaguirus? How many players?
In Tokyo, Megaguirus, maybe 50 musicians, maybe. But Moscow, 90 musicians.
Oh wow!
It's incredible. So when was there anything that was actually recorded in Tokyo prior to going to Moscow? Like, did they try to record with a Japanese orchestra and ultimately decide to go with a bigger orchestra, or was it just they knew from the start that they were going to go to Moscow?
ゴジラ対メカゴジラの時は最初からモスクワに行くことが決まりましたか？または最初は少し何か東京でやって、やはりモスクワに行くか、どんな感じでしたか？
いや、もうメガゴジラをやるときにメガギラスが終わったときに、次の年もやるかもしれないっていう話があったので、すぐにモスクワに行くともう決めてました、最初から。
So as soon as Megaguirus was over, they had talked, they mentioned, okay, we might be, doing something else again next year. And right away they were like, okay, well, we're going to go to Moscow and we're going to do it.
Was there any reason they didn't go back to Moscow for Tokyo S.O.S?
Yeah, Tokyo S.O.S is yes, Japanese orchestra.
Well, do you know why you guys didn't go back to Moscow?
これはね、モスクワのスタジオっていうのがものすごく大きいんですね。ものすごく大きくって、ほとんどセパレートされてないんです、オーケストラの楽器が。すごくオープンスペースなんですね。それで、私のゴジラ、パーカッションがすごく多くて、で、音が大きいので、いわゆるパーカッションの音がすべてのマイクロフォンにかぶっちゃう。わかるかな意味が。
はい、わかりました。と思います。So the studio at Moscow was very large, but the different instrumental groups were really not separated at all. It was pretty much just an open space where everyone was in the same space. And you know, the percussion that they used for Godzilla was, you know, it was very intense. It had a very big sound, and that sound was getting picked up by all of the other microphones, and it was becoming a problem.
I have a question. Did she notice any difference? I mean, aside just from perhaps volume because of the size of the orchestra, but any difference in the style of performance, Japanese musicians versus Russian musicians?
日本人のミュージシャンとロシア人のミュージシャンの演奏のスタイルなどに違いがありましたか？
もう全く違いますね。いろんな国のオーケストラとレコーディングやるんですけれども、もう本当に、まず国によって、いわゆる、なんだろうな、多分演奏の方法が全然違うんです。それと楽器の鳴らし方、例えばロシアのミュージシャン、モスクワのミュージシャンは、ホルンのミュージシャンとかいったら体が私の3倍ぐらいあるんですよね。ものすごい体が大きいんですよ。だから出てくる音もやはり全然違うんですね。
So yes, she said it's completely different, based on, you know, country to country, sort of the way that people perform and the way that people play their instruments is different. And then, you know, specifically if you think about Japanese versus Russian musicians, the Russians were just much larger sort of in stature than many of the Japanese musicians. So naturally, you know, if the body's bigger, the lungs are bigger, everything's bigger, the sound is going to be different.
It's funny because Ko Otani at one point, when we did the concert with him, he had mentioned that. He said that he felt like Japanese players they didn't have as much breath in them to, like, the brass players couldn't get what some American players could get as far as like just the performance on brass.
こう谷さんはコンサートの時に全く同じことが言いました。言ったそうです。日本人のプレイヤーはアメリカ人より小さくてなんかトランペットなどのブラスの楽器は息が違います。どのぐらい息があるとか。
ただもちろん日本のミュージシャンのいいところもあって、日本のミュージシャンは譜面を読むのがすごく早くて、すごく正確なんですね。なので、限られた時間の中で音楽を作るのは日本のミュージシャンとてもうまいんですよ。ただ、出てくる音とか、すごくメロディーを歌うとか、そういうのはその国によって全然違うので、私がモスクワを選んだ理由のもう一つは、やっぱりミリタリー音楽みたいな、全員が同じことを一緒にやって、その迫力みたいなのが、モスクワのミュージシャンがすごくあるので、で、実際にゴジラのメインテーマを、レコーディングが終わった後に、目の前で演奏してもらったんですね。そしたら、本当にその迫力に、本当身震いするぐらいのミリタリーのタンタカタンタカタン、すごい統一感と迫力っていうのはものすごかったですね。あれはやはりロシアのミュージシャンの特徴なんじゃないかと。
Okay. So she started off by saying that while all that is true, she thinks that Japanese musicians obviously also have their good points. For example, they're very good at playing and learning quickly, and they tend to be very, very accurate. And in the case of Russian musicians, she feels that they have a certain like vigor when it comes to playing military style music, and that that's sort of one of their strengths. And that when she did the Godzilla recording, they played it in front of her, and she was, she thought that it was very sort of like, it had an intensity to it that she thought was very good.
So speaking of militaristic kind of music, obviously when you write a Godzilla score, you tend to get to write almost every type of music. You can do big monster music, you do military music, marches, heroic marches, and even like some of like the more personal human themes. Like I particularly am a fan of some of her human themes from Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. So which particular type of music does she like to write the most for?
ゴジラ映画で作曲するときにいろいろな種類の音楽が書けるんですね。そのミリタリー行進と英雄的なテーマともっと柔らかい人間的な音楽も作れます。と彼が特にメカゴジラの人間的な音楽が好きと言いました。と大島さんはその全部の種類の中で一番作ることが好きタイプがあるんですか？
そうね。一番好きなのはファンファーレ、パパパパン、パパパン、大好きなんですね。で、その次に好きなのが、やっぱりヒューマンなメロディーを書くのが好きです。で、好きだけど、一番大変なのは、いわゆる戦いのところのバトルミュージックがすごい大変。ものすごい譜面の量を書かないといけないんで、限られた時間の中でその量を書くのは、すごいもう体力がいりますね。大変です。
So she said that one of her favorite types is the fanfare type of music, like the trumpet sounds she was making that I won't imitate because I'll make a fool of myself. And as well as the human melodies she likes as well. And she went on to say that the most difficult type of music for her to write is all of the different fight music, because you just have to make such a large amount of it in such a short time, and the pressure is really on for that.
I have a question, actually. So on this theme of human music versus monster music, how can you portray a monster musically, either with melody, harmony, or instruments versus human? Are there certain elements of monster music that perhaps you would not use in human music to really make that difference?
人間的と怪獣の音楽の違いについて聞いています。例えば怪獣を音楽で描くときに特にメロディーとハーモニーと楽器をなんか人間の音楽と違うように使いますか？どのように分類しますか？
作るときは考えてませんけど、最終的にできたものを聞くと、多分ヒューマンなときにはストリングスをメインに使ってるような気がします。弦楽器がメロディーをやる。それでやっぱり怪獣のテーマとかバトル音楽とか書くときはもっと金管楽器を、たくさん使うのと、やはりテンポ、音楽のテンポがバトルは当然速くなりますし、それ私はすごい気にするのはテンポとキーっていうのは調整何の調整で演奏するかっていうのはすごい気にしますね。
So she doesn't necessarily think about that while writing the music, that she's got very clear ideas of how she wants to separate these things. But if thinking about it now, she thinks that for human music, she does tend to use strings more, and it's more melodic music. Whereas for kaiju and battle music, it's Kinkan is brass. there's more brass instruments, and the tempo tends to be faster. So she does think a lot about the tempo and what keys she decides to use for kaiju and battle music.
So when she got to Tokyo S.O.S, she got to write for another one of the most famous kaiju, Mothra, and she used the Yuji Koseki Mothra theme a little bit in her composition, but she also wrote these beautiful original melodies. So what was her approach and her feelings to write for Mothra?
So 東京 S.O.S で少しモスラの音楽を作曲しました。モスラの音楽はもちろんちょっと長い歴史がありまして、小関裕二さんの音楽と自分のオリジナルのメロディーを一緒に使いましたので、アプローチとかどのようなアプローチがありましたか？
小関さんのメロディーは監督の方からそのままちゃんと使ってほしいっていうオーダーがあったんですね。なのでもちろんそれをいかに、私は大好きな綺麗なメロディーなんで、美しいメロディーなんで、それを美しく聴かせることをまず考えました。でも東京 S.O.S は一番難しかったですね。ゴジラが出て、ゴジラが出て、なおかつモスラが出て、その3つが戦うっていうので、作曲としては一番大変でした。
So she had very clear instructions from the director that they wanted her to use Yuji Kosaki's melodies as they were, and she listened to them and she thought they were very beautiful. So she was fine with that, and she went on to say that she thinks that Tokyo S.O.S was the most difficult movie to score, just because there's 3 monsters in it, and they are all coming out and they're all fighting, and it was a challenge.
Well, and one of the things that really stands out with Tokyo S.O.S is that movie doesn't end with her Godzilla theme. It ends with this gorgeous requiem as Kiryu and Godzilla are sort of sinking to the bottom of the ocean, and it's such a beautiful piece. And I guess you wouldn't really use the Godzilla theme there, but did she have any? Because it just sounds so inspired. Like, how did she feel about writing that beautiful requiem that really just sounded like it was bringing those 3 movies to a close?
So 東京 S.O.S の終わりでそのファイナルシーンでゴジラテーマ曲を使ってなくて終わりにすごく美しいレクイエムの音楽を使います。ゴジラとメカゴジラが海に沈む時にすごくインスピレーションがあるとあってとその音楽を作った時にどのように感じましたか？聞きました。
私はそのゴジラはゴジラメガギラスメカゴジラって3本3年間続けてかな作曲したんですけれども、その最初にゴジラをやる前はあまりゴジラ興味なかったんですよ。だけどゴジラを3年間やるとゴジラが大好きになっちゃったんですね。それで最後にもうゴジラが死んでいくのが死んでいくっていうか水に沈んでいくのがもうとても悲しかったんです。私が一番悲しくて、それでもう本当にああいうレクイエムになっちゃったんですね。もうすごいゴジラにもうだんだんもう親しみ湧いちゃって、最後は本当に悲しかったです。
So as I'm sure you know, she did these 3 Godzilla movies, one right after the other, 3 years in a row. And before she worked on the first one, as she had mentioned, she didn't have too much of an interest in Godzilla. But as she worked on these films over time, she really started to love Godzilla, and she felt a connection to him. So, at the end of this trilogy, when Godzilla's dying and sinking into the water, it was actually very sad for her, and she felt very touched by it. And she used those feelings to write this requiem.
So I sort of want to ask her, because we mentioned earlier about stage concert music versus film music. Now, I learned from her last year when we did the concert. I kind of observed the way that she took her film music and sort of made it performance worthy on the stage, because sometimes what is played in a film, if it's going to be live and in real time, you have to give musicians breaks. So what's her process to sort of take like something like the battle music from Godzilla versus MEGAGUIRUS and make it so that it can be performed in a live concert?
コンサートのためにね。
そう、以前、なんかシカゴで、ゴジラ音楽を演奏されたとき、その編曲について話したって言って、そうですね、と、映像の音楽を撮って、コンサートステージで演奏するときに、どのようなプロセスがありますか？例えば、ゴジラ対メガギルスのバトル音楽を変更して、コンサートで演奏するのは、どんなプロセスがありますでしょうか？
まずレコーディングの時は、もちろんすごい長い曲の時もありますけど、セパレートしてレコーディングできますよね。ここの部分だけレコーディング、ここの部分だけ。でも、コンサートはやっぱり特に今回、組曲にしてすごい10分ぐらいの曲なんで、とても長いんで、例えばずっとトランペットが吹きっぱなしだと、もう途中でもう苦しくなっちゃう。なんで時々休ませてあげたり、今度はここは吹くとか、そういう全体の10分のシンフォニーみたいに構成して、緩急をつけたり、最後に盛り上がるようにという一つの、まさにシンフォニーのように組み立てることが大事。まず一つそれが大事で、もう一つはやっぱりレコーディングの時は全部にマイクロフォンが立ってて、ちっちゃな楽器でもすごくクリアに音が聞こえるようになるんですけど、コンサートの場合は、やっぱりコンサート会場でよく聞こえるためのオーケストレーションが必要になってくるので、その辺は随分チェンジしました。
Okay. So when they are recording music for use in the film, some of these pieces, they get very long, but since they're, not doing it live, they can separate things out when they're recording them. But when, for the concert, when she's, especially when she's combining different themes together to sort of make like an anthology longer piece or something.
A suite.
You really have to, like you were saying, the musicians need to rest. For example, if you've got the trumpet player going full blast the whole time, they're going to keel over if you don't, think about how you can alter that for them so they can breathe. So you kind of have to think about it from the perspective of all of the players and really keep that in mind. That's very important when you're putting together the orchestra. And then another thing is when you're recording, you can have microphones for, every individual instrument, even the smaller ones, so you can hear everything very clearly. But when you're on a concert stage, you kind of have to think about how you can conduct so that everything is heard in a clear manner. That's something you have to be cognizant of.
What did you enjoy most, Michiru, about being able to perform that music live last year for fans that love it so much?
ゴジラ音楽のコンサートで一番楽しんだことは何ですか？
やっぱりゴジラのファンがもうそこにゴジラの怪獣の音楽が大好きな人がそんなにたくさんいて、もう本当に喜んでくれる、楽しそうに聴いてくれる。もう私が一番幸せでした。I was very happy.
So it was very touching for her to see, just to see so many fans of Godzilla and of Kaiju all together, and they're listening so attentively, so happily, and that's just really touching for her, and she's very pleased.
And I just want to let everybody know, Michiru was sick when she was on stage, so she powered through it. Michiru, you were. I remember you being a little sick when you did your performance.
その時、そのコンサートでミチルさんが病気でしたけども、一生懸命やってくれた。
She wasn't feeling well.
100%体は100%ではなかったんですけど、
そうですね。
すごく頑張りました。
もうそれはコンサートだけじゃなくて、レコーディングや他の仕事の時もそうなんだけど、とにかく最後の最後までいい音楽を作るためにベストを尽くす、努力するっていうのが、ポリシーなんですね。ギリギリまで。なんで、すごい怖い顔をして、多分私をコンダクトしてたの時は、すごい怖い顔をしてたんじゃないかと思います。
So she says not just with concerts, but with recordings, it's her strict policy to do everything she can to work hard all the way to the end to make sure that she can produce good music. So she's probably making a very scary face while she was conducting.
So I'll have to. We'll ask some of the musicians. Some of them might be watching tonight, but maybe the scary face works. It just kind of keeps them kind of in line a little bit. So Michiru, you were very busy this year. You told me a few times that you've been working nonstop, and you haven't had really time for a holiday. So obviously this year everybody's kind of in isolation. We're trying to be safe with COVID-19. So what have you been up to this year, and how have you stayed busy kind of while being safe?
みちるさんはすごくお忙しいと思います。いろいろなプロジェクトがあってともちろんCOVID の影響もありましてどのようなことでどのプロジェクトで働いてましたかと最近何をやってるとか。
そうですね。いや今年入って本当にもちろん映画の音楽やったり、アーティストのためのCD、アーティストのいろんな演奏家のための CD の曲っていうのがいろいろあったり、アニメーションに入ったり、でちょうどここ1ヶ月半ぐらいは日本でいわゆる再演されるミュージカルローマの休日っていうのの、ミュージカルの再演だったんですけど、そのためにはもうほとんど書き直しをしたので、それが明日初日なんですね、東京で。私は東京に行けないんですけど、それがあったりで忙しかったです。それで、やっぱもう一つはやっぱり COVID-19 のために、レコーディングがすごく大変だったんですね。私はそのモスクワだったり、ハンガリーだったりのオーケストラでやるんですけど、今回、いわゆるロックダウン、どこの国もロックダウンをしたので、ハンガリーでレコーディングしようと思ってセットアップしたら、もういわゆる演奏家が仕事ができなくなったり、今度モスクワにコンタクトをしたら、もうレコーディングの前の日に、働いちゃいけないというふうになって、ロックダウンになってレコーディングができないとか、そういうこともあって、本当に大変でした。
So she has been very busy. So starting at the beginning of the year, she was doing film music. She was working on artist CD songs and some animation. And then 1.5 months ago, she was working on the Roman holiday musical. She rewrote almost all of that, and they're performing that soon.
Tomorrow.
They're performing it tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So she's not able to be there, but that will be happening. And then in regards to the effect of COVID-19, she was saying it's been very difficult to get recordings done. For example, she tried to do recordings in both Russia and Hungary. And in Hungary, she got all of her equipment set up, and she was going to do the recording. And then, the people who were supposed to work on the recording, they were unable to work because of lockdowns. And then, she tried to do a recording in Russia, and the day before they were going to start, it became a lockdown, and they weren't able to get anything done. So that's been a challenge.
Was she going to travel there, or was it going to be remotely?
Oshima さんは自分でハンガリーやロシアに行くことでしたか、またはリモートで。
今回はだから行けなくて、リモートでしたね。まだ行けてないんですね。いつもは行くんですけれども、今年は本当に特にアメリカからは入れないことが多かったので、全部リモートでやりました。
So she did all of them remotely because she wasn't able to go. And, of course, if you go from America, you're not always able to go to certain countries or come back in because of travel restrictions.
Quarantines and stuff like that. Absolutely. So is she finally going to get at least a break or like a staycation holiday sort of thing, or is she pretty much going to be working through the end of the year?
それでちょっと休みがありますか？バケーションできますか？またはずっと働くですか？
でもバケーションがあっても今年はどこも行けないですよね。
まあ、ステイケーションということもありまして、
inside vacation。
しないけど、自分の家の中で何か楽し
み。ずっと作曲を家の中でやってたので、本当はどっかに行きたいな。暖かいとこ行きたいですよ。もう暖かい南の島とかに行きたいです。
She really wants to go to like a nice warm tropical island somewhere. So
that would be nice. That sounds incredible.
She should come here to San Diego.
San Diego is very hot today.
Yeah, and yesterday.
It's a beautiful city.
I like this weather over here when it's getting cooler and on the East Coast a little better, but it fall's my time, so I love it. So Michiru. So there's a lot of people that really look up to you. They enjoy your music, and you yourself are a great teacher. I mean, I've learned a lot from you on my own. So for younger composers out there who look up to you and they enjoy your music, what would you say to them about having a strong about writing music and having inspiration? How would you inspire a younger composer?
世界中でいろいろな人ともちろん若い作曲家が大島さんに憧れて大島さんの音楽がすごく好きと思いますとそれだけではなく大島さんはすごくいい先生でした。ジョンさんにジョンさんがいろいろなことを学ぶことができてすごく感謝してるってとそのような若い作曲家に作曲やインスピレーションについて言いたいことがありますか？
これは私がずっと守ってることなんですけれども、私がすごい若い時に先輩の作曲家にどうやったら仕事って増えますかって尋ねたことがあるんですね。そしたらその先輩が、私に言ったことが、みちるちゃんそれはとっても簡単だよと。いい音楽を書けばいいんだよ。で、私はそれからもう何十年もそれだけを自分に言い聞かせてます。私のやることはいい音楽を書くために努力をすること。それだけです。
Since she was very young, she would frequently ask her senpai in the composing world, "Senpai, how do you get more work?" And they would say, "It's very simple. You've got to write good music." So over the decades, since she was a younger student, she's just worked very, very hard to make the best music she can, and that's really all it is.
Who are her biggest inspirations?
誰か先輩
誰から一番影響を受けたかと思いますか？
私はでもクラシックのコンポーザーで好きなのは、何人かいて、一人はチャイコフスキー。なぜかというと、ロックのエマソン・レイカード・パーマーが、エマソン・プレイズ、チャイコフスキー、ロック。で、チャイコフスキー、それと、バーンスタイン。レオナルド・バーンスタイン。好きです。
He was a New York composer.
Yeah.
It was funny because they would refer to Leonard Bernstein as Bernstein East, and then Elmer Bernstein was Bernstein West, and that was kind of like their nickname. Just useless information, I guess. But all right, so we are getting to the end of our panel here. Erik, did you have anything you wanted to sort of add?
Well, just really quickly, Michiru composed a new piece of music called Godzilla in Chicago at our Kaiju Crescendo concert, and of course that will be included on the upcoming CD on Supertrain. Just really quickly, Michiru, speaking of inspiration, what inspired you to write the Godzilla in Chicago piece?
ゴジラのシカゴの
ゴジラin Chicago インスピレーションですね。
はい。その前までのゴジラのテーマとは違う種類の音楽にしようとまず思ったんですね。それでシカゴを想像したときに、すごく大きな湖があって、そこから、怪獣が出てくるというイメージで、三拍子の速い三拍子の音楽にして、こう割と優雅で怖い音楽にしようと決めたんです。こういう優雅っていうか、そうすごくなんかなんていうのかな。あんまりこうそれまでみたいにこう縦にこう音楽流れるんじゃなくて、こう流れるような音楽で怖い音楽を作ろうと決めました。
So she first approached it thinking she wanted to create a different type of music to the typical Godzilla theme. And so when writing it, she visualized the city of Chicago, with the large lake, and thought about like the kaiju coming out of the lake. So the theme she wrote is sort of very like flowing, but also very scary. So if you can get that image in your mind of the
like the bubbling water, like yeah, it was great. That was great.
It's a really cool piece of music, and if you weren't in concert and couldn't hear it, you'll be able to hear it soon on the recording on Supertrain, so look out for that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So Michiru, thank you so much for your time tonight and for being here with us. We enjoyed talking to you so much, and it was really nice to see you again, even though it's virtually. It's been a little bit, but and Amanda, thank you so much. You did wonderfully tonight. You were so good.
Tremendously good.
It was so good. It was so good. You might have just like made more work for yourself, to be honest. No.
Excellent. But, well, Oshima-san has been very nice. Very, very helpful. So.
Yeah, but thank you so much, and Michiru, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. And stay tuned because we got more Kaiju Masterclass coming up. Good night, everybody. At least for Eric and I, but we got more coming up, so stick around. All right. Good night, Michiru. Good night.